Twitch can be so finicky sometimes. Or really OBS.
It's twitchy.
It's twitchy.
Yeah, I don't like watch a lot of streams, so sort of
all right.
Getting used to all those quirks.
Yeah, all right, we're back. I think, yeah, I checked it out on my thing. I think we're good now. Yeah, all right, we're back. I think, yeah, now I get to hear my weird voice as it echoes in the thing. Oh, gosh. All right, sorry about that, guys. It looks like we had some weird network era there. So, you know, Twitch is being twitchy. Jokes were made. The coolest things happened when, you know, the screen was blank. So, you know, we can't really recreate that. Someone pulled out a guitar, but, you know.
There was a great horned owl just swooped in and sat on Scott's knee.
Yeah, I taught it to talk.
Yeah.
It was amazing. You know, really can't say anything more than that. But nonetheless, we just had done talking to Rich about musical influences of bands and such, and I think Scott, you had some things to say as well.
Oh, yeah, I know it's cliche to be like, I listen to everything, but I listen to everything. So as far as the influences for this go, I mean, like I said, I was in this giant glam kick. So it was like Bowie and T-Rex and all that stuff. But this time around, I'm trying to incorporate more stuff than just that, like ELO. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of prog is. I mean, what's interesting is sometimes hearing, you know, when other people pick up the game. We've had more times than I can think that somebody's picked up and been like, "Oh, this is like this band," and it's not a thing that we had ever thought of, and it's kind of like, I guess I don't know, like. Yeah, I don't know. I think at one time I heard somebody like pick it up and was like, "Oh, this is like a Dire Straits RPG." I'm like, if you say so, you know.
Sure.
Definitely not what I was thinking.
That is a supplement I have lined up. Is the Dire Straits, but I mean, I'm working on the Thin Lizzy one first.
Yes, yeah.
What's kind of like the weirdest, I guess, influence that someone talked about?
Oh God.
They were running.
I know there's one out there, but it'll come to me, I'm sure.
I think someone wanted to make like a Graham Parsons country themed one or something.
Oh yeah, we've got a couple people, because there was in the 50s there was a guy called the legendary Stardust Cowboy.
Oh yeah,
who was like one of the first like space pop artists. He was actually doing that like a little bit even before Sun Ra started doing that in jazz, and his music isn't great, certainly, you know, but yeah, he wore this like glittery cowboy outfit and like wore it just outside, like he just walked around like that, which I think was just amazing,
like a champ.
So there are some aspects of that. I'm gonna think of one. I know that there's one that's on the tip of my tongue that was like very, very weirdly jumped out at me, but I'll probably just shout it out at some point.
Just later. Randomly sometime later.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
I've found aspects of the Bold Velvet Generation thing in every genre of music at this point. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we've found like Deltron or Donovan, or just about every genre has like some aliens in it.
So. That's fair. So one of our fans, and actually a player from the game, asked how you guys feel about theremins.
I've never really considered my emotions regarding theremins.
we need to examine this.
I built a theremin once from a mail order kit.
Ooh.
It didn't work.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I'm not good at electronics, so I just did it according to the instructions. And when it came to figuring out what I did wrong, it was never going to happen. So I have a theremin that doesn't work, but it's beautiful.
I always thought it was like a weird, like kind of novelty, but then probably more recently, thanks to like YouTube and stuff, I've seen videos of people like literally playing a theremin like and it was always just some weird like sound effect and some spacey music, and stuff like that. For plus, I've seen at least one very good video of a cat playing a theremin.
If you haven't seen the cat playing a theremin video, look it up.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can find it and put it in the comments.
Just splice it in, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, in terms of Velvet Generation, is this a reimagining of Footloose, or is there some deeper political meaning to be found in this game?
All right. So it's kind of a weird story with that. So timing wise, when the first version came out, we started writing it in mid 2000, and it was it was like concept album, goofy kind of. I mean, not Footloose specifically, but obviously we were thinking about that in that vein. And I remember since back then there wasn't a lot of like electronic distribution, we were just only focusing on printing books and coming out at Gen Con. And we were originally going to try to come out Gen Con 2001, and we got delayed. So we pushed our delivery date out 1 year to come out in Gen Con 2002. And right after Gen Con 2001, it's like some things changed in the world.
Some stuff happened.
So and all of a sudden we're like, all of a sudden the like sort of, fun times, goofy concept started to feel a little bit more real. And there were lots of times we were like, we're kind of racing against reality here a little bit. And so you can't tell from reading the book now, but like we can tell just like what parts were written before and what parts were written after that. And they have a different tone.
But I'm working to make sure that it doesn't read that way.
Yeah. And then
because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's I mean, there's a little bit of a tightrope you do have to walk when you're talking about, you're talking about a totalitarian government, you're talking about fascism, you're talking about repression, you're talking about a lot of things that do really affect people's lives now. And there's some ways that you could fall into like sort of parodying that or making light of it. So it's an interesting like tightrope to walk because we do want to make the game, it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be enjoyable. You are talking, especially when you get into like the revolutionary rules and like how the ministry affects the players. You get into some stuff that it is really real. And there's we have one of like, in addition to sort of the safety mechanics that we're writing into it, there's like especially one part where we're where we encourage groups to get together and talk about the kinds of things that could happen when the authorities start messing with you, because some of that stuff might not be a thing that people want to include in their escapism, or it might be a thing they do want to include so that they can then say fuck the man and burn it all down. But that's for individual groups to decide.
Yeah, definitely. And as like a GM, I do appreciate that kind of in the mechanics and kind of in the tone of the game, because I like the fun, just rocking out aspects of the game, but I also love the fight the power and doing kind of getting in that revolution type of play. So having that in the game was really cool for me, at least.
Yeah, that's what we're going for is like it becomes a little bit more okay, we feel, to put the more serious elements in because you're giving the players a way to fight back. It's not like we don't want to make a game where it's just like, hey, here's some misery porn. Here's living under this this terrible regime, and by the way, there's nothing you can do about it.
Sort of like a socio-political world of darkness.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, World of Darkness.
And that was the thing that we were missing in the 2002 edition that we're really looking forward to people getting their hands on this time around.
Which we're really excited about. So you have two factions that are kind of factions that the players can explore: the Blue Army and the Velvet. Are there parallels to be drawn between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King concerning kind of their approach?
Oh, that's heavy.
Let me drop that. You guys want to drink first?
Malcolm X never actually, I mean, he was accused of it, but he was never actually like a terrorist. So,
I would say, I mean, not, I mean, that wasn't, you know, I wouldn't say that's like the number one sort of mode of thinking, but we are, I mean, we are like, I would say, you know, the phrase "by any means necessary" probably does apply to the Blue Army a fair bit. But you know, one of the things that we do want to do with this is we want to like, we're not explicitly saying that, like, I mean, it's not a violent, not a particularly violent game. The characters, the protagonists are always going to be outmatched in the violence department by the authorities. But we're also not saying that that is never an option, right? Because character, you know, you do have to defend yourself, and then also sometimes, you know, there's sometimes the situation will call for it. And the game, we're hoping that it presents it in such a way that, like, that is an option. If you go to that option very much, you end up calling down a lot more trouble on your head than you would if you took the slower, safer route. But, you know, sometimes your back's up against the wall. So we weren't necessarily trying to connect it to like individual, you know, philosophies or sort of theories of change, but you can see bits and pieces of a lot in there, I'd say.
It's not even really like extremism versus centrism either. It's because they both believe the same thing.
Yeah, they're both radical. You know, they both have a radical agenda. The Blue Army just is more likely to pursue it with some maybe more extreme tactics or something like that. But you know, they're not. No one in this game is advocating that people try to vote the ministry out of office.
That's fair.
We're going to impeach them. That's not no boss.
Yeah, that works. All right, so someone who is watching right now wanted to know what was where did the idea of the Star Children come from?
Mostly like Man Who Fell to Earth or Ziggy Stardust, to be honest, because that's kind of the seminal alien musician.
But I have for me, the idea, there was one, I don't know, did we talk about The Explorers? I think it was called The Explorers. There was this, I think it was a Steven Spielberg movie
where the kids make a spaceship out of garbage.
They make a spaceship out of an old tilt-a-whirl
because they have like a force field generator. And it turns out that's all you need.
Yes, they build this. This kid invents a thing that makes like a force field bubble, and they decide that the first thing they're going to do with it is put a bubble around this old tilt-a-whirl cart and load it down with snacks and stuff like that, and somehow they fly it up into space. So they're in space, but they get picked up by these like really weird looking green skinned rubbery aliens who are obsessed with Earth pop culture. And for them, it was all like old, like 40s and 50s movies. Like there's one of these aliens just talks like Humphrey Bogart. I think there's like a Little Richard musical appearance in it. Not him himself, but like there's that. So I would, when in the vein of aliens obsessed with Earth pop culture, that was what was on my mind because I watched that movie about 10 times when I was a kid.
We'll have to put that down on account so people can
Yeah,
watch it.
I have not seen it in probably about 30 years. So maybe it's terrible. Maybe there's, I mean, it was a movie from the 80s. Maybe there's a segment in there that's just like extremely racist that everyone forgot about.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Yeah, not many movies have aged well.
So I'm just going to say I'm not endorsing everything that's in it just in case. But that did.
Just watch the aliens part and then just kind of carefully watch everything else.
Anytime a director who grew up in the 50s like, hey, you know what's fun? Something racist happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
But,
hard going back.
But yeah, I'm always thinking about, because when you're growing up and going to the planetarium on field trips and stuff, they're always like, right now, the Alpha Centauri is just getting episodes of I Love Lucy, and you start thinking about that, and then you start thinking about that when you go home and watch terrible crap on TV, and you're like, oh no, what are we doing? So that's, and like in Contact, when they first get like television transmission back. And they zoom out and it's a swastika because the first transmission was the Berlin Games. And they're just like, there's space Nazis. There's no space Nazis in this game. But
Not just Earth Nazis.
It is fun to think about the fact that we are just spewing stuff out. And in this game, the time doesn't really make sense because our signals go through like a wormhole or something. So they're hearing them almost simultaneously.
Yeah, we had to figure out how it took them 100 years to get here, and they're getting here exactly 100 years after these signals left Earth, and we were just kind of like, wormholes. I don't know.
I mean, ship faster, but no, we didn't.
No, I mean, if there's ever a problem in sci-fi, just throw a wormhole in there.
Wormhole. Yep.
Yeah, it'll solve it most likely.
It'd be like, the wormholes don't work like that. You'd be like, prove it.
Yeah. Show me on the graph.
Do the math or get out.
Yeah. So you guys had some interesting mechanics with the game, and I had a lot of positive feedback concerning it. How did you design the mechanics of it, and what were kind of the main influences there?
It was, so we read all the reviews of the 2002 version, and apparently committed more of them to memory than we thought. And it was the system is completely different from what it was before. But it was one of those things where there was a bunch of people who said like, oh, this is a really neat idea. Like, you don't really even need the rules. And I was like, well, but I wrote the rules.
And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Just go with it.
But one of the things that stuck out that a number of people had said was that it came out sort of right, like in a particular time where just a couple years after, there was a lot more experimentation, a lot more thought that went into like what goes into an RPG. Like we were playing a lot of Deadlands before this, like right before this, like World of Darkness was out, but like stuff like, a lot, there's like indie boom of games came out sort of like right after that. But we were still sort of clued into that community. And one of the things that people were saying is that like, if I don't remember who said this specifically, but it was might have been Ken Hite, who was just like, if you're playing a band, then the rules should feel like you are a band, that you're all collaborating on something, which is not a thing that a lot of RPGs even did, but it was kind of an interesting idea that stuck out. So we made that goal number one when we started it this time, and I started with the idea that like I wanted to, instead of the thing that happens in a lot of RPGs is there's a lot of games will have like the rule where you can spend your action helping somebody else, doing your own thing. But I don't recall ever playing a game where it felt like that wasn't like a consolation prize, like a thing that you would only do if you're completely screwed in a lot of other cases, or that it was your only option. So I was like, the first rule is going to have to be that everyone is always helping or being helped by the other people in the band. And everything's sort of like built out from that concept. So I was like, well, if you're going to be doing that, I need the mechanic to have people always have have the dice that they're working with and the dice that they're helping with. So we came up with like the matching thing after playing a lot of like one roll engine games like Rain and Wild Talents. And then it's just sort of spun off from there. And then also I was watching Voltron, Legendary Defender, when the relationships thing came to me, because I'm watching this and noting that, you know, the thing that pulls them through in every one of these fights is like how they feel about each other and how they relate to each other. And like that, even I forget their names, even the two that like really hate each other, you know, really don't like each other, the fact that they don't like each other helps the group.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
when it hurts. Like I'm so mad at you that I'm going to try really hard to make you look bad. That still helps the group. Like the group is still better by the fact that they feel strongly about each other.
Yeah.
So that's where the friend and lover and rival relationships came from.
Also in Velvet Generation, you for some reason only form the line for like 5 minutes at the end.
Yeah. That's an important. We haven't written that in yet, but
Okay, you could just be the lion all the time, but you won't.
So I mean, it was really interesting mechanic, and you know, while playing it, I really liked the fact that there was more involved with kind of like the community and relationship aspect than other games I've played. And geez Louise, the relationships flashbacks concerning my own times in bands.
That is the thing. So this was your stream was basically the first. I think it was like of this iteration for sure. Like the first time I think either of us have really been around a completely separate group playing.
Yeah, like not the playtest dude.
Where like so it was an interesting thing to see. But even outside of that, in demos and things like that, every time you explain those relationship rules to somebody, they're all like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean." Okay. So I'm glad that is at least successful at hitting a chord with people.
Yeah, it did.
It does its job.
I've never been in a band, but I have a lot of friends who are always in bands, and you hear a lot of stories, and it's kind of fun to see like them come out in the game. Like, oh, that guy's got this relationship. Almost all of them are enemies, though.
Yeah.
Not a lot of lovers. Seems like.
Yeah, I feel like you know, we should just replace all the relationship with different aspects of rivalry, and
Yeah.
you pretty much got your average band.
The rock scene doesn't have enough lover relationships.
It does not. No.
Especially if you're hearing about them after the fact.
Yeah. You got a Fleetwood Mac situation going.
Yeah, we do have I don't know if it's in the demo that we put out
Mhm.
yet, but there is a rule in there that like if two characters have a relationship of a certain strength, you can just sort of like decide that you are going to change the type of the relationship without changing the strength, and you just have to role play a scene where you like make that happen. So you know, you can do that either because it comes up naturally in play, or you know, there's even like weird tactical reasons why you might do it. But you know, and one of the early backers in the Discord chat named that the Nix Buckingham rule, where you just, you know, you turn your lover relationship into a rival relationship, and it was a 5 before, and it's a 5 now.
You'll never break the chain.
Nope. Like the reference. So we talked about your previous version of Star Children Velvet Generation. What are kind of like the biggest changes other than kind of like the card system to dice?
One was bringing the revolutionary stuff to the forefront.
Definitely saving the world is more of a thing now.
Yeah, it was in the setting, and it was mentioned that you're part of this revolutionary group, but you never, you know, one of the concepts I didn't hear till after we came up with this is, you know, system matters kind of thing. That if you're going to have something be an important theme in the game, it needs to be part of the game. So whereas before we were like, hey, here's some like revolutionary missions you can do, there was no way to connect that with like actually go out, reach out, and impact the setting. It was a very the very 90s mindset of my game's going to have this huge meta plot, but you're not allowed to affect it except in prescribed ways. So one of the things that we knew that we had to do was give you a way to punch back, basically. And it's a role-playing game that you can win. You can actually take down the ministry as part of the game. That's one thing. I think broadening out the musical influences and stuff like that, and a lot of the cultural touchstones has been another mission that we've had with this.
Just kind of tightening things up. Setting-wise, not a whole lot has changed. It's just a little more vivid.
That's fair.
Oh, wait, one other thing. In this version, in the last version, this was not true. In this version, it is expressly true that you cannot play a cop.
Oh.
There is no. I think we had a cop background where you could play like you're the local officer sort of cop. Like no, you're not. You're playing a member of a band who is a revolutionary. You're not playing a cop.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that's an odd kind of pairing.
Well, and it was a very sort of 90s sensibility too, where like if you're making an RPG, you try to model everything that could be in that setting. Try to like pre-guess what some people are going to want to do with the game, and I'm like, well, if somebody picks up this game and decides to do that with their character, that's their business. But we don't actually have to encourage every single possibility. We're not writing a GURPS book here, which is cool if you like GURPS.
Yeah.
Like we didn't like in this game. You playing music and performing gigs is how you advance, literally stat wise, the same way like fighting is in D&D. It is how you accumulate the power to fight back against the ministry. So like if you wanted to play the game and not be a band of musicians, you would have to do some work.
Yeah.
I find a way, but it's on you to do that work, basically.
So one of another individual watching, their question is, and I know only Rich played in a band, but during your in real life,
I was never in any band.
Neither of any band.
Scott technically plays more music than I do because he owns a keyboard.
Yeah,
Ooh.
but about a band.
All right, now I'm gonna switch up the question. Did you guys ever get to do something rebellious that you can say online?
Yeah, I don't know if this is this is a gateway to some really bad stories.
I mean, my time in Ireland was, that's not funny.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like. I've never thrown a brick through a window or anything like that. I
used to put Twinkies and cupcakes on the rail tracks because I didn't want to eat them.
Not a
I was a
Twinkie.
kid, and just to watch them go splat. That was pretty edgy.
I may have. I did encourage somebody once to vandalize a package that had been left in their apartment building that was very clearly for a gender reveal party. She just wrote "It's a boy." Congratulations on it, because fuck gender reveal parties. Probably no large scale revolutionary activity on my part. But
that we can say online.
That we can say online.
Go to like DSA meetings. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing. I went to a chili cook-off once. That was.
Ooh, oh man, that's. You sure you want to talk about that online though? That's.
No.
It was.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was some great.
Some good socialist chili though.
Socialist chili.
You guys shared that?
I mean, it was on Facebook, so
You don't have to do much digging to find out I like chili and socialism.
Both are good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
I feel like I had a couple questions. Like, for some reason in my mind, you guys were. I was imagining two people who looked like variations of David Bowie.
You mean we don't?
I mean, it's a little bit. I see somewhat of the resemblance, and of course, there's David Bowie up there.
No, that was one line that was in this was Ken's review in one of the first reviews in 2002. He said he imagined the two people writing it as these like old, stuck in the 70s like ex rockers basically. And then when he finally met us and found out we were quite a bit younger than him, was surprised.
How
If I
many
shave off this beard, I look exactly like him.
how many times does this happen?
A lot, yeah. I'm glad that people, like if people pick up this book and think that we've actually played music, I'm happy for them to have that misconception. But I barely ever was able to play a few notes on my bass guitar that I had when I was in junior high, and I can play the opening riff of Paint It Black on an Irish flute, and that's it.
That is very specific.
Yeah, as far as I got.
I can play the theme to the film Gremlins
Ooh.
on my keyboard, and that's about it. I can also make some nightmare sounds in Ableton,
That sounds cool.
which isn't an instrument.
Thing. So going back to the beginning, how did you two meet?
We met in high school.
Yeah, I don't even remember meeting you, to be honest.
Just always was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We met through I knew your brother before. I knew Chris before you through like high school theater. But yeah, just high school.
I think we just wound up at the same parties. And
yeah, I totally went to parties in high school.
oh, I remember now. I was walking down the street with a bag of groceries with a baguette sticking out. And you were riding your bicycle, but you were reading the newspaper at the time.
Yeah.
We ran into each other, and then we picked all up all our stuff, but we switched our stuff.
Yeah. And then we had
It was awkward, but it was meant to be.
It was a baguette.
Yeah, sorry, the actual answer to the question.
No, I like that.
I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar.
Yes.
Don't you want me?
So I was checking you guys out, and I saw Rich. You were involved in some indie game design circles. I forget the specific name, but maybe you can help me out with it.
Yeah, the Indie Game Developer Network, IGDN. I'm the treasurer. It's a good group. We've got a little over 100 people in it. It's essentially, I think it started as a much smaller idea of just a few publishers basically getting together to like share resources, share to be able to distribute their books through retail, get convention space in a way that like isn't really affordable for small publishers. But it's grown from there. It's grown a lot from there. We have our number one mission right now is championing diversity in the game design community. We have a lot of outreach efforts that we still do all that logistical stuff, which is really cool and is an absolute godsend for publishers who back when when Star Children came out in 2002, like we rented a booth at Gen Con for 2 years straight. And just the the financial cost of doing that, not to mention getting the rooms and everything like that,
Is
is more money than the book ever made, like easily, right? Whereas now with IGBN, you pay some money and you get some space in the booth. But like I said, we sort of expanded from there. One of the we do the Indie Groundbreaker Awards every year at Gen Con, where we recognize some people really making some interesting waves in the indie game space. Last year we sent, I think, 9. They're gonna kill me for getting the number wrong if I got it wrong. We sent 9 aspiring or just pretty starting out game developers to Metatopia. I don't know if you're familiar with Metatopia.
I have heard about it, but I'm sure others haven't. So please explain away.
So Metatopia is this really, really great event put on by Double Exposure in Morristown, New Jersey. Every year, it's usually right after Halloween, and it is not a game convention; it is a game design convention, basically. The sort of big central activity is that you go there and you bring a game to test. You're not demoing a game, you're not selling a game, you're not just running a game. You're deliberately bringing something that's incomplete that you're still working on. And most of the people there are other game developers. There's board game developers, card game developers, LARPs, RPGs.
Nice.
And basically, when you sign up to go, you are not only running your event, but you're actually basically obligated to obligated sounds like something you wouldn't want to do, but like your role there is to also play in other people's games, and there's structured feedback for what people are looking for and how to help, and basically like everyone who goes is sort of like they sometimes the organizers put like if you go to this thing, someone calls you on the phone and works out what your schedule is going to be with you. They ask you what kind of games you like, they ask you what kind of games you're into, and what you have experience with, and they put a ton of like real human brain power behind people into the right games. It was huge. I went for the first time in 2017, and then me and Scott and Dan O'Hanlon, another developer on the game, went last year, and it's just like that first year I hadn't done any. I did very, very little with the game. We knew that we were going to do it, and number one, the fact that we had that pressure sort of kicked my ass into getting something out there, and I went out there with like way less than I would expect being able to actually show to anybody. But I did it, and the feedback sort of like refined. I think we tested music and just the basic rule system. There was no character creation or anything like that, just how you roll dice, basically. And even that, through 3 sessions of it was fantastic. And then by the time it came around this past year, we were able to test out the character creation system, mostly of what we still have in there. But this conference is so useful. Not like there's the testing aspect. It's also just kind of like a great networking event. Everyone's in the same hotel. You're all hanging around the same bar, restaurant, lobby area every night. And it helps people sort of break into the industry. I think probably more new projects are born there every year than probably at any other event. But bringing it back to IGDN, one of the things that we do is we run a scholarship every year, where we kick in money, we solicit sponsorships from like game companies, and we run a GoFundMe where we basically collect a bunch of money, and we specifically seek out designers from marginalized communities, people who would not be able to make it on their own, and we get them there so they can run their tests and get all the advantages of attending. And yeah, like I said, last year we sent 9 people there.
Nice.
Probably aiming for about that same number this year. And yeah, no, IGDN is a great organization, worth looking into if anybody's a designer and looking to do stuff.
Also, crazy positive. It was like the most positive gaming environment I've ever been in.
Oh yeah. Metatopia is like, just really, really supportive. Really, really just creative energy everywhere.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I feel sometimes in kind of like the hobby and game designer community, there's often that feel of competition. Like, you know, if you succeed, that means I don't succeed and stuff like that. So it's really good to hear kind of the cooperation and then the love there.
Doesn't feel like that crowd goes to Metatopia.
I mean, like, just kind of like as an example, the first time I went out there, I made the decision to go really late in the game. It was probably about 3 weeks before it actually happened. Got a lift out there from a friend in town, Eric Simon, who also had just published a rock and roll RPG. And while there, ran into, I think, 3 other people making rock and roll RPGs. and then last year, maybe like 2 more, I think, Mabel and one other person had both been talking about doing these. And it was great because, like, at no point were any of these, like, none of us were ever just like, oh no, there's competition in the rock and roll RPG space. I'm just kind of like, you know, every one of these games felt different. Every one of them felt like they would build off of each other. I wanted to buy every one of them. And it was, it was a really great, like, really great experience like that because everyone is super supportive of everyone else. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's always good to hear. All right, let's see. For those watching, once again, we are speaking with the guys from XIG Games, Rich Ranello and Scott Leeton. So feel free if you have any, post any questions. Though we are coming up kind of at the end of the talk here. But you know, hopefully, Velvet Generation will be coming out Gen Con.
That's our goal. Yeah, we had a pretty ambitious release schedule originally planned, and we did, partly because of the rigorous playtesting that we learned how to do through Metatopia. We had more revisions to do on the game than we thought originally. So, you know, like happens with a few with some game projects where we pushed the release date out to Gen Con. That's looking pretty good. We have 3 events running at Gen Con. So if you're coming, check it out. And yeah, that's our goal. And I mean, like as you saw in the stream, like the game that we'll be coming out with a fully playable preview version pretty soon. Mitch, you got the preview of the preview for the stream. But yeah, it's essentially very close to the stage where we're going to send out the preview for you know, blind play testing. Just basically anyone who, you know, putting it in front of the eyes of people who have not before gets you a different level of feedback from playing it yourselves. So we're looking forward to that. And once that happens, we will be entering the final stages of getting it done. But it will definitely be at Gen Con. Regardless, we will, as soon as we know things like exactly how many pages it's going to be and how much it's going to weigh, we'll have pre-orders up and stuff like that. In the meantime, the first edition, the 2000 edition, is available, pay what you want on DriveThru RPG. So seriously, just take it for free. We don't care.
Yeah, and I'll have that in the links for those watching on YouTube and later for both those items, pre-orders as well as checking out the DriveThru RPG, the previous version. So what's next? I mean, you got Gen Con coming up. That's kind of course, kind of the sun on the horizon. But do you guys have any ideas like what's after that?
I don't think we've really thought about it. I mean, there's a few random ideas kicking around. We don't have anything planned to write. I have maybe a 5th edition D&D set I want to do, but trying to exercise those thoughts from my mind as much as possible right now. Because this isn't really a full-time gig for either of us. So, yeah. There's that. There's a few, many possibilities.
I'm gonna learn bicycle repair.
Ooh.
And conversational Japanese.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
No, neither of those are true.
What? No, come on, man.
Yeah, it's it's one of those things where it's back in 2002. If you were going to do something like this, you had to put a lot larger percentage of your life into it, because you had to get it. You had to look at getting a book that was printed on a printing press, that you had one shot at putting out. You didn't have, there wasn't social media, there wasn't Kickstarter, there wasn't any of this stuff. So you were putting a lot of your own money and a lot of your own time on the line for something you didn't really know how it would work out.
Yeah.
And with Our Children, it worked out fine. It broke even, which is better than most RPGs do, I guess. We still have a lot of copies sitting in the basement, which will be going out to Kickstarter backers for this one as well. But it's nice that we're in a situation now where if you have an idea, you can workshop that idea, in communities online. You can seek out collaborators who you didn't know at all before. Speaking of IGDN, great for that too. You can put early editions in front of people's faces. You can get the money that you need up front. You can do all these things, and it's such a different world now, which is pretty great. I know one thing I'm going to do right after we come out with, right after we do this, will be, and you saw a preview of this, the system that we have. I really like it. It's worked out really great. But all of our playtests and all of our most of our gaming experience is all in person, and we don't do a lot of online or streaming games. So one of the things that I realized early in the process was that group pool idea of the dice sitting in the middle of the table is actually kind of hard when you're not in the same room together. So one of the first things I'm going to do is write plugins and extensions for Roll20 and probably Discord that handle that for you.
Yeah, when you do, let us know, because we'll play it again.
When I do, I'm gonna need some feedback from people who have tried to run it online. So I'll be in touch. But fortunately, that looks like it shouldn't be too hard to do.
Yeah, because I remember last time I was like, all right, I had the group pool in the chat, and it was on paper and everything.
Well, and that's why I think I mentioned it. I might have mentioned it to you. I was like, "Hey, no one's ever done this before. We're really interested to see how it turns out." Yeah, and it needs some supporting tools, but those can be built.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I think they really loved it, and the kind of having the lead and the backing and the relationship between those two, it was so dynamic in the way that everything kind of came together.
Yeah, one of the things I've been psyched about is how it makes it okay to not always have the spotlight on you.
Yeah.
That you have this back and forth. And I don't think anybody I've ever seen, because I've run through a lot of sessions where people make their discographies and stuff like that, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody really make one set of characters always the leads and one set of characters always the backups. But I think that even if you did that, both of those roles are contributing and having fun with it. They're contributing different things to it.
I mean, if you look at other systems, right, especially, I've been playing Chronicles of Darkness recently, and when you assist somebody, it's only a +2 or +3, and you're like, yeah,
you're using your whole action.
Yeah, and this, it really felt like, even though I'm kind of in the background playing my bass, I'm adding a lot, and the success of the lead wholly depends on the backup success. Which I
Yeah.
really love.
We've run through in some of the playtests some like really odd situations where it's like, what if I haven't one of the things I want to test is a full-on solo act, and see what it would be like if there's one player
On a bar stool,
not designed to be played that way,
wearing suspended.
But well, there's a podcast called Table for One, hosted by Jeff Stormer, and he does a really interesting thing with it, which is he runs sessions that are one player games, usually where the player is the designer of the game or a designer of the game, and it's just a podcast where it's like he's running a one-person game, and we were talking about it a little bit. And we're just like, how would you do, like, in this game that's designed for this collaboration, how would you do that? And I think like both simultaneously we were both like, Prince.
Yeah.
I don't know how well the rules support that, but we knew exactly who the character would be.
What about Morris Day and the Sun?
Prince.
Just Prince. That's fair. I would like to see that. If that happens, please post it so I can watch.
It'll just be like it'll be a sad sounding like podcast of me in my office just rolling dice alone.
It'll be one of those podcasts people used to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Just the sound of dice rolling.
Yeah, I'm just getting ideas for like late night channels and shows.
You're gonna do. We'll team up. We'll do the Twitch version of Norwegian slow TV.
Yes. Just rolling some dice.
Whatever the gaming equivalent of like logs just being sawed.
Next up on Penny for a Tale.
For the next 13 hours.
TV for dogs. What if there was like a role-playing game for dogs that you could like, you're just reading out loud to your dog to make them think of squirrels and things?
I mean, I heard about just recently a LARP for that you run with goats. So
I am signing up for this.
Yeah, I just don't know if they'll be min-maxers. It's kind of hard to tell. Like goats, they just seem like they might be. Yeah, one of our fans says gaming ASMR. Yeah, I was on a channel for about like 5 minutes just watching it. Like, what am I watching?
You know, I've done a lot of gaming that has ASMR in it.
Yeah, that's just what happens when you chew too close to the microphone.
Yeah.
Just Doritos and dice.
Yeah.
The Mountain Dew. All right, well that's we've come to the end of it, ladies and gentlemen. Rich, Scott, I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me this evening.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Do you guys have anything you guys wanted to plug before we're kind of out?
Well, I think we plugged the game a fair bit. We're on Twitter at velvet_gen, GEN. We are on Facebook if you just search for that. We don't update them as often as we probably should, but as the game sort of comes to a head, we will. They're probably the best place to check for when things go on pre-release, pre-order and stuff like that. If you are in or near Chicago, I am running demos of it this Saturday at an event called Level Eater Dimension Door. We have links to it on Twitter and Facebook. It's in my neighborhood in Bridgeport. There's a lot of other designers and stuff doing demos and play tests, and it is this Saturday starting at 1 o'clock.
Excellent. And those links will just be right in the bottom for people to check out.
Yeah.
Scott?
I don't really have anything to plug. While you're here, visit a SoundCloud. Not my SoundCloud because I don't have one, but there's a lot of good SoundClouds.
Just visit SoundCloud.
Visit SoundCloud.
Just go.
I have a t-shirt shop. It's Rocket ROCKIT .threadless.com. I think I should probably know. Anyway, yeah, I don't have that much to plug.
Check it out.
I'm fine.
I'm good. And before we go, Rich, I love the fingernails.
Oh, thanks.
Really cool.
I invested in the UV light and have
Yeah, that thing is great.
actually gotten okay at it. So
Nice.
I got one too. I'm
Yeah.
getting finger cancer.
Yeah, and Scott, I love the rainbow.
Oh, thanks. It's been a while.
Yeah, I have a little bit blue, but no one can ever see it.
I saw it in the last one.
yeah, it was really obvious in the.
It was really cool too because like all the hair, the headphones were inside the hair. So they were just glowing red. Really.
Yeah, that's very painful to do because I really just gotta like brush the living hell out of my hair, and that was my wife, and before it's just like tears out of my eyes before makeup.
You're suffering for your art.
Yes, exactly. It's
I
I wanted to make sure I got into the character of being in a band.
Oh, yeah. You did it, man. You did it.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll find all the things we talked about, the links and everything, just below if you're watching on YouTube. It'll also be posted on Facebook if you're so interested. Please follow, like, pre-order. Velvet Generation's an amazing game, and I encourage you guys to check it out. Rich and Scott, I guess I will see you guys at Gen Con.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.